All right. Hello, and welcome to Talk to Walk, episode 28. It's been 2 weeks since we did the last episode, but guess what, David?
What?
This is the first episode of season 5. So we're going to recap the season 5 premiere.
Awesome.
And actually, in the history of Talk the Walk, this is the first season 5 premiere we've ever done.
It actually is. We're breaking new ground.
That's the way that works. Before we get into that, what have you done the past 2 weeks?
Well, other than work, I did have a little fender bender recently.
Oh God! I knew you got in a wreck, but I haven't heard the ddetails yet.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to talk to her? Is it still being it's still being investigated?
Still being investigated. They're probably going to listen to this. It was one of those things where I was behind someone. They came to an abrupt stop to make a left turn. I guess they didn't realize they were at their turn, whatever. And,
oh, God. I hate people to do that.
Right. And I tried to swerve and miss them, but I just kind of caught the back end of their car, and it got the side of my car, but all the way down the side of my car pretty much.
Jeez. I saw the pictures.
Yeah. So now I'm driving a minivan.
Rocking the minivan. You need 3 more kids.
I do, right?
And they all need to play soccer.
I need the little stickers in the back, the little zombie stickers on the back window.
Does Cooper play soccer?
Not yet. He will, though.
So no need for a minivan just yet.
Not yet. I'm not a soccer mom.
Karate practice?
He could do... There's the karate thing, I'm kind of... I don't know about him. He might beat up too many people karate.
Man, I just got back from New York.
I was going to say, you had an exciting last little bit.
Not as exciting as you might think, though. It sounds more eventful than it really is. But have you ever been to New York?
I've never been to New York. No, I flew over it one time.
Where was you? You was going further north? Was you going to Canada?
I went to Canada, yes.
Really? You went to Canada? I was joking. What was Canada like?
Take off, eh? It was... Canada's actually pretty cool. I enjoyed Canada.
I think I would like Canada.
I saw Niagara Falls from the air. Saw New York from the air. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, New York from the plane looks really cool.
It does.
Yeah, that was one of the coolest parts actually was when we got there, it was daytime, and when we left, it was nighttime. The nighttime shots are
I was about to say, yeah.
They're like those NASA shots of cities with lights. It's crazy. So I went there for New York Comic Con. We talked about that last week. If my voice sounds weird, that's why, is because I'm still jet lagged and sick and stuff from the plane. I cannot travel without getting sick.
Ebola?
Maybe Ebola.
Maybe.
I don't know. What's funny is I really kind of freak myself out with the Ebola thing. It's hard not to, man, because there's so many people talking about it.
Right.
And if at the LaGuardia Airport in New York, they were screening people for Ebola.
All right.
And they didn't screen me.
Oh.
I almost asked the lady, could she screen me?
Please do it, yes.
Yeah, but what if I had it and then they just they put me in one of those ET bubble things
You just happen to be running a slight fever. Get them.
Yeah, so they were testing every third person and it didn't get me. And so I kind of wish it had.
Right.
And I wasn't sick that day. And then whenever the plane landed, I started feeling sick, and the next day at work I was sick, and it was flu-like symptoms. And they say that's what you get.
It is. It is what it is.
And New York was full of Ebola talk. I was sitting on the subway, and someone had written in whiteout marker Ebola on the side of the bench I was sitting on. And so I was like, maybe I've got it. Maybe I got it.
Right.
And so I started reading about it. I was trying to go to sleep one night, and I was reading about it, and reading about it just makes it worse.
Of course.
If you're paranoid, just don't read about it.
Don't read anything.
Just ignore it. But I'm over that. I don't have flu-like symptoms anymore, but my voice is still gone. So sorry if I sound crazy. Before I went to New York, everybody was saying, everybody there is going to be rude. It's going to be just hectic and haywire. You're leaving the Southern charm, so the South is known for being polite and stuff.
Hey, I'm walking in.
Yeah. Hey, I'm walking in. Yeah. That sort of thing. But I didn't experience any of that. I did have one cab driver that was like a douchebag.
Right.
But we took a lot of cabs and only one of them was a jerk.
That's right.
So, I mean, that could have happened in Anderson.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
1 out of 15 people anywhere is probably a douchebag, you know?
Exactly.
At least. At least.
At least one. Right.
And it was amazing. There was so the guy that was a douchebag, we were trying to get to, the hotel we were staying at was at 51st and 3rd, or at least that if we got off at that corner, we could get to the hotel.
Right.
Well, we told the guy, hey, take us to 51st and 3rd. Halfway there, he starts freaking out. He's like, 51st eastbound. Like, you want 52nd. And like, in my mind, I'm thinking, you're a cab driver.
You tell me. Yeah.
A, charge me like $3 more and drive around the damn block so that you can go eastbound.
Right.
Or I don't know which way it was, but like, just drive around the block. Or it's a block either way. Whether you drop me off at 50 or 52nd,
right?
It's still it's a block away from 51st. And so but the guy was freaking out. Like, he was flipping his shit because I didn't tell him 50 or 52nd. And so I was just like, 50. Like, it just it doesn't matter. And then whenever we got around stuff that we recognized anyway, we just asked to get out. So
there you
go. But there was another cab driver that was telling me that he's been he was, I'm not sure what the city was, but he had a heavy accent, and he was saying that he drove cabs in like several different parts of the world.
Right.
And he'd been in New York for like a year and a half or something like that, and he just left London, and but anyway, he was like, I asked him, hey, what do you think about America? And he was like, America is the most understanding country towards immigrants. And I've never heard anybody say that. So I was like, how long you been here? 3 hours?
Right.
Like, did you just get here? You got a driver's license,
Are you sure
right?
you know where we're going?
But he was a really nice guy, and he was telling me, like, from his perspective, like, how he thought about New York. And I don't think the dude's ever lived anywhere but New York. So,
right.
And I will say that New York seems to be a different kind of tolerance than the rest of the country.
I was gonna say. And now, me personally, I'm a big soccer fan. I follow like the English soccer leagues and all that stuff. And London is notorious for being pretty racist and
really?
Like if you like look at any of the soccer league, a lot of people get in trouble, especially fans, getting like the league will like come down on section of fans. They'll close off parts of the stadium and to punish because they'll chant like,
oh really?
Like really bad stuff. And like, there was one not too long ago where this Brazilian guy, black guy, they started throwing bananas at him.
I heard about the banana thing. Yeah.
It can be pretty bad. And then Italy, neo-Nazis are really bad in some of their league. Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Really weird.
So yeah, I could see, we're not that bad.
That's the kind of stuff he was telling me, and I never heard anything like that. I thought America was the racist one,
right?
I thought we were the bad ones.
That's the thing. We're also, concentric on what happens here. We don't look at a lot of things that, hey, it's not really that bad. Sometimes. So.
And like we were saying before we even started talking, like 1 out of every 15 is a douchebag. So
right? Exactly.
Maybe that's just universal.
But now, I still haven't asked you. Did y'all do any of the Walking Dead stuff at the Comic-Con?
So here's how that worked. No. No, here's how that worked.
I thought that was coming.
It was, New York Comic Con seemed like it was all about The Walking Dead. Like the passes had The Walking Dead.
Right. They had that big hand outside in Times
that was
Square.
cool in Times Square, the big hand. Yeah, we did see the big hand.
Yeah.
It was, 5 days till
and then they took one finger off.
Yeah, and it was perfect because we were there for those 5 days.
Right.
We almost saw every finger. We didn't discover it until they'd already lost the pinky and then this finger. And then we went by there the last 3 days to watch them take off the other fingers.
I should have left the middle one for last.
Yeah, that would have been awesome. if they only had thought about that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so the Walking Dead was everywhere in New York. You would have thought it was Atlanta. It was crazy. Right. Like on the sides of buses, they had the big billboards that captured the side of the bus and that sort of thing. And Selfie. It was the TV show Selfie.
The Selfie show,
and The Walking Dead. It was both everywhere. But, Yeah, and it struck me as odd because like The Walking Dead doesn't touch on New York at all.
At all, yeah.
Yeah, it's weird that they targeted that so highly, but I guess it's just because so many people live there.
Right, exactly.
But the con, from the outside looking in, seems like it's going to be all about The Walking Dead because the Walking Dead's on the passes. You know, the big panel there, like the huge panel, is they have the whole cast like everybody. Yeah.
Right.
But the thing is, people waited from like 2 a.m. Like people waited like the night before
to get in,
just for a chance to get a wristband that may let you in. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And they opened the doors. So people waited outside from like, cause it's not like Dragon Con. So like, I kept comparing it to Dragon Con because that's the next biggest con I've ever been to. And it's not like Dragon Con. The way Dragon Con is like, it never sleeps. Like Dragon Con is always going on.
Right.
It's just basically Atlanta is Dragon Con for that weekend and there's nothing else going on. Well, this is like in a building. They close at like 7:00 every day.
Really?
Yeah. And there's panels and stuff going on at night, but they're like other places. Like they'll close off the artist alley and they'll close off the vendor floor. And then they've just got a section set up for a few panels. But really, everything kind of stops at like 8 or 9. It's not like, you know, at Dragon Con, you could walk down there at 4 a.m. There's something going on.
That's kind of weird for New York, you would think.
Yeah, you'd think they'd be open all the time.
Right.
Because you can go to Times Square. You can go to Times Square at 3 in the morning, and it looks like it does at
right. I was
10
just saying, isn't New York the city that never sleeps?
It's the city the city that never sleeps. But Dragon Con or New York Comic Con apparently sleeps.
Exactly.
The city doesn't, but the con does.
Well, damn, you didn't get any pictures of Lauren Cohen.
So I was thinking that I might spend one day just trying to get in, but we would have literally had to spend like 2 days out of the 3 days to even get we might get in if we did that, you know?
Right.
So I didn't do it. And I didn't even see, none of the Walking Dead people were available.
Walking around, stuff.
Yeah. It wasn't like, you know, like basically like all the comic book artists like Neil Adams. I got to interview Kevin McGuire. I hope that's right. If I got that wrong, I'm sorry. I got to interview a lot of comic book artists, but nothing Walking Dead related because those people were locked away, you know.
Right.
Like even more than Stan Lee. Like even Stan Lee at Heroes Con, I caught a glimpse of him walking from one place to the other, you know, like The Walking Dead, they were locked up tight.
Well, I would figure too with them, I mean, that was right in the middle of their shooting too. So I imagine they flew in, was there, flew right back out, and they
might have only been there for that.
For that couple hours.
I know they didn't have any autograph sessions. All they did was the panel. So that's probably what it was. They probably flew there and flew back.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But so I still got a little bit of jet lag, but does jet lag count like if you don't change time zones? Is it still considered jet lag?
We'll let you have it.
I don't know if you get jet lag from New York to South Carolina.
Right.
I don't think that's long enough. Let's see. So back to The Walking Dead.
Hold on.
What's up?
Who did you who did you tell me to remind you?
Oh, Adam Savage.
The Adam Savage, yeah.
So I did see, there's a podcast that, from time to time I watch called Tested. And it's like Adam Savage's like nephew or somebody.
Right.
I don't know how his relation to Adam Savage is, but he seems to be just some guy that every once in a while has Adam Savage on his podcast. And I don't know how that's possible unless he's like related to him somehow.
Exactly.
And his co-host, I forget his name, but his co-host, I saw at New York Comic Con, like taking pictures and video and stuff. And he was bouncing like a pinball. Like he was dead set. And they're not like famous enough that people would stop him and talk to him, but it's a really big podcast, honestly.
Right.
I mean, they have Adam Savage on it every once in a while. And, I tried to flag the guy down and talk to him, and I was going to be like, hey, you should check out my show, Tall the Walk. You know, I was going to do that whole thing, but, I mean, he was bouncing around getting pictures just crazy. So I might, I'm going to watch for that video. I might be in their episode. I don't know.
He might think you're some stalker guy following me everywhere.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I just saw him for like a minute, and he was taking a picture of a cosplayer, like, right in front of me, so I might be photobombed I wish I could remember who the cosplayer was, like what character it was. I don't know, but I'm gonna start watching their YouTube channel and watch for myself. And then
There
if
you
I'm
go.
on there, I'm gonna post something on there, and I might even tweet him, and then maybe he'll mention the show. I don't
There
know.
you go. Any news is good news.
And let's see. So, The Walking Dead.
So, The Walking Dead.
Let me open some links here. Before we get into the premiere recap, we have a few news items.
News items.
Anyone you want to do first, or just go in order?
Just however froggy you feel.
All right. Let's see. Well, probably the most important thing you're going to learn this afternoon is that Lauren Cohan, before she was a actress,
There you go.
was an underwear model.
How did we not know this before?
How is this just now coming
I
up?
know, right?
Like, we had all and I saw she took new photos in another magazine.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it was Maxim. I don't remember what magazine it was. But it was more risque than the
Risque.
first ones. Yeah.
Well,
When she did the first ones, I was kind of like,
that wasn't bad, but
yeah, she was catching a lot of heat for nothing. These are pretty, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Like,
no, I mean,
I don't think it's necessarily a bad career decision to take sexy photos of some magazine. Sometimes, like if you're like a pop artist, like a pop music artist or something, sometimes it can be a negative to your career because people
True.
start saying like,
you're just a face and
Yeah.
body. You're not really
you're not talented, but no one can say that about Lauren Cohan.
No, she's a good actress.
I think she's doing this because she's trying to break. I think a lot of the Walking Dead cast is trying to break out of the TV market because The Walking Dead is so good. It's so popular in the ratings. But apparently before all this, she was kind of like a JCPenney's kind of style underwear.
So check it out.
Yeah,
Click on the link on our page.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes. Actually, nothing they're not bad. They're just kind of thing you'd see in like, one of those magazines. We won't go into all the details of that, but you remember when you were a kid and that's like all you had?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Too bad.
We couldn't see. I'm probably the right age that there was a time period where I might have been looking at Lauren Cohan and I just
It
didn't
could
know who
have
she
been.
was.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Think about that, David.
That just blew my mind.
Let's see. We also have 7 reasons to watch The Walking Dead. So
It should be good.
I'm thinking with the season 5 premiere, there's probably going to be The Walking Dead haters out there. Fuck all you guys. 1 in every 15, right?
Run every 15 's a douchebag.
And so this kind of gives us a list of 7 reasons why The Walking Dead is so popular, and maybe we can use this as kind of like a ammunition for the TWD haters out there.
Which there definitely are.
They definitely are out there. Haters gonna hate and all that. I'm not gonna read the article word for word, but they've got the 7 like the key
Bullet points.
yeah, and then we'll just kind of discuss what we think that means. So the first one is the number 7 reason to watch The Walking Dead is that it evolves.
It does.
They point out that if you tried watching season 1 and then couldn't get into it, that it's likely that, which season 1 was awesome, but if for some reason, like for example, season 2, a lot of people dropped off at season 2. The show is so different now than it was in season 2. And I don't think any of it's bad. I think it's all good. I don't think
so either.
But it is a show that is constantly evolving. And with season 4, we heard Scott Gable talk about that a lot.
Yeah,
even the last half of season 4 feels so different than the first half.
Oh, definitely. And you look at, just Rick is the prime example. Obviously he's the main character, so he should be the prime example. But
yeah.
Rick season 1 and Rick season 5 are 2 totally different people.
Yeah, definitely.
There's survival mode at first, trying to find the family, and now it's just like brutal survival mode. It's like, anything and everything to do to live, and a lot of characters have gone that way. You can even see
like look at
with Carol.
Yeah. She's so different.
She is. Yeah. She's totally different.
But even the way the story's told changes.
It does.
Like season 1 was mainly from the perspective of Rick.
Right.
And then, season 2, we started getting the whole 2 different groups kind of thing and how they coexist. And then And then that was kind of when they started introducing the idea of humans are actually worse than the zombies.
Right.
Was kind of mid-season, season 2. And then season 3, they started telling the 2 different stories of the governor, like the other side of what Rick might have become.
Right.
Should he be power hungry? And it's like every season is kind of a different way of telling the story. And it kind of has a different theme.
Yeah.
And one episode into season 5, we don't quite know how this story is going to be told yet. I don't think it's revealed just yet.
Right.
But you can definitely see the dynamic of season 5 is different than, season 4.
And one of the things, like, even further evolving, if you're listening to this, it's not really a spoiler, but, with Judith, and Rick coming back together, it's going to be interesting to see how he evolves. Yeah. Is he going to be even more brutal now that he has the baby to protect, or is he going to dial it back some?
I think he'll dial it back some. I don't know. So? I think he's going to kill the fuck out of Gareth.
I do too. Red-handled machete.
Yeah, with a red-handed machete.
So what would number 6 be?
Number 6. It's not about the zombies.
I've said that from the beginning. It's not about zombies.
They could not do 5 seasons, and I think the show will probably go around 8 seasons. I don't know how long it's going to go. But they couldn't do that if it was all about the zombies.
It's not a movie. It's not, I think a lot of the haters say, oh man, there's not enough zombie killing. Or in season 2, that was the big thing. Well, there's no zombies.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's about characters and
even the comic. Like I was thinking about earlier today, because another story that we have coming up after this has to do with who might die on the show.
Right.
And I was thinking, well, we know who died in the comic, but then they don't do the same thing as the comic.
No.
And so then, like, we're talking about haters here, right? So like, then you have the group of people that's like, well, they don't do it. So they either the same people that say, I don't like it because I don't feel like people are gonna, I feel like everybody's safe and, like they couldn't kill, Daryl or they couldn't kill, and I thought they weren't, I thought they weren't going to kill Herschel when they did.
Right.
I thought they were going to kill Herschel a long time ago.
I did too,
and then he stayed, and I think the show's unpredictable and that's a good thing. But it's like the same people that say that they wish the show was a little more unpredictable, are the same people that say
it's not
they don't do it like the comics. Yeah. Which is stupid. Like, why would you?
Which is totally predictable.
Yeah, exactly. If they did it the same as the comics, it would be 100% predictable.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I'm like, when I look at, I'm a big reader. So when I read a book and then they make a movie out of it and I go to the movie and it's totally different, sometimes I'll be like, that movie sucked.
If it changes the feel.
If it changes the feel of the, exactly.
Yeah.
But this doesn't, you still got the same thing. They're still weaving in and out of the comic.
It's still the same, like, theme, the same vibe.
Right.
And
but you can't, I mean, the TV show for people, I mean, I guess if you never read the comics or anything, it's still new, but as the show's gotten more popular, I guarantee you the comic readers have grown exponentially.
Oh, yeah.
And why would you want to read it and then watch it and have it exactly the same? I mean,
it makes more sense to me that it's this way.
But that's the one thing, like, like my wife, she doesn't watch. She's like, I don't want to watch a show about zombies. And I always say to her and anybody else that says that it's not about zombies.
It's not about zombies.
It's about people.
Yeah.
And,
but what I was going to say though is that like, the comic though is the same way. Like it's the same theme. The comic's not about zombies.
Right.
So I mean, I think that theme carries over and that is one of the reasons why you should like the show.
And I think that's what makes the show good.
Yeah. 7. All right. So 7, 6, 5. So we're on 5. They don't have them numbered. So I might lose count before the end. The number 5 reason, it has great characters, which is kind of what we were talking about. It is very character driven.
Right.
In very AMC fashion. AMC shows are heavily character driven. And the comics character driven. I think that The Walking Dead and AMC was a perfect matchup in that sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see. And we kind of talked about a lot of the stuff that this article's saying, like take Carol, for example. Thinking about how much she's changed over the course. One thing that we're going to get into when we go into the recap of the premiere is that, I kind of got this thing where like you saw you keep waiting for Rick to turn into Walter White. Like, you keep waiting on Rick to like totally lose who he was in season one and become this,
Rick Heisenberg.
Yeah, the Ricksenberg.
Right.
And even, when we saw him bite the guy's throat out and like, I kind of thought he's almost there. Like he's getting there.
They're messing with the wrong people.
Yeah. But then you have the scenes in this episode where, him and Glenn are talking and Glenn says, they're talking about saving the people that's in the boxcar. And he's like, no, we're still those people. We have to be.
Right. Exactly.
And, Rick's like,
you're right.
Goes and helps him. And then you see Rick whenever he sees, Judith and like, you just keep getting these glimpses that he's not Ricksenberg yet.
Right.
And so that's kind of like what I like about Rick is that we see him kind of like dipping his toe
right.
in the water, but he never fully dives in.
And nothing, I mean, this episode was brutal.
Yeah.
But most of the brutality wasn't from them. It was from, it was from Terminus people and obviously the people from before Terminus. But what Rick did was not, I mean, what he did was kind of brutal, stabbing people and doing all that stuff. It was.
But you cheer when it happens.
Yeah, I
cheered when he bit the dude's neck.
I was going to say, he didn't do a neck biting type thing in this episode. It was, he did what he did. I mean, other than like, hey, don't kill him, let him turn. I mean, that's brutal.
Well, one thing I learned about this episode was apparently cannibals and Nazis you can do anything to on television, and it's okay.
Everybody cares.
Because the scene where they're in the smoker room and they're talking about if you run into one of these guys, kill them. Don't because
they'll kill you.
They'll kill you. Don't hesitate. And for some reason it made me think of that whole Nazi thing on television where it's like, do whatever you want.
Right.
The Terminus people, it's okay.
It's okay. They're not really people.
So what are we on? Number 4?
4 is.
Number 4 reason, it has great writing. And I do have to, their first sentence is The Walking Dead gets a lot of flack, saying that it has bad writing.
I don't see that at all.
And they say, which is sometimes fair, especially in earlier seasons. Like we went back and rewatched a lot of those old episodes to do our top 10. And, I actually, some episodes that I did kind of have problems with thinking back on, like, oh, that was kind of weird the way they did that.
Right.
When I went back and watched it, it was kind of okay.
Right.
It kind of like, Lost does that too. Like you think there's like flaws and you're like, oh, I don't really like the way they did that. And then you go back and watch it and you're like, no, knowing what I know now, it makes sense.
Exactly.
And yeah, The Walking Dead does that. It really,
and that comes into the whole evolve thing. I mean, that, every single episode can't be 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
All the time. I mean, you've got to have development. You have to have character development and story development and things like that. I've never had an issue with their writing at all.
I think the writing has always been good. Now, I will say it's changed a lot because they kept switching writers in the beginning.
Right. And showrunners and all that stuff. And
so it kind of like, I could see how if you liked one showrunner and then they changed and you didn't like the next guy,
right,
maybe you had a problem. But honestly, ever since Scott Gimple breathed new life in the show.
Oh, definitely.
I wasn't getting bored with the show, but I think that the show is just taking on a whole new.
I do too.
It's just got a whole new vibe through it since he's taken over, and I really appreciate it. I'm really a fan of.
I like Greg Nicotero.
Yeah, he was
when
good.
He directs and stuff. He does really good job with the episodes.
It's unpredictable. So we kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. They mentioned it's not quite Game of Thrones, which is true. I can't spoil Game of Thrones for anybody, but yeah, it's not quite Game of Thrones, but it's unpredictable. I mean, the next list that we're going to go over is 7 characters that can't die. MTV put out a story, 7 characters that can't die on The Walking Dead, meaning that they think that the story provides too much leverage on these characters and that they couldn't kill them off. I wanted to go over the list because I think the whole list is bullshit. I think they could kill anybody on the show.
I think they could kill anybody on the show too.
I think Rick would be the hardest to kill, and they probably wouldn't, but it wouldn't be impossible.
No,
they could do it. Yeah. But yeah, I think the show is completely unpredictable.
I do too.
And I think some people have false hopes in certain characters that they're not going to die. I'm just saying.
I do too.
Yeah, I think that it is completely unpredictable. I really thought Glenn might die in that, at the beginning of the first episode. Or Bob.
I
thought they'd pick Bob over Glenn.
That's what my guess was. I thought Bob was dead. And I thought, and I can never remember, Rosita, what was her name? Rosita.
Was she in this? During you thought like she died like during like the shootout
during the shootout or something like that. I thought, somebody's got to die, but it didn't. And it was totally unpredictable.
They don't normally kill off a main character first episode.
Right.
This would have been the first time, but this was the first time that they didn't have a gap in time.
Right.
Like we were talking about that going in, they'd probably have a lapse in time. And I think because Carl's older now and they're not worried about him hitting a 2-foot growth spurt during the summer.
Right.
That they're probably able to do that now.
Yeah, his voice wasn't like really high at the end of last season.
Yeah.
He comes back, okay, now we're going to get out of this boxcar.
So this is the first season that didn't have the gap in time, which was kind of neat. It was kind of neat seeing that the story pick up right where it left off. Yeah, that was pretty neat and unusual for The Walking Dead. Let's see.
2.
It cares about its credibility.
I agree with that, yeah.
By the way, I should plug, this is on zaptoit.com. They might be terrible. I have no idea. This is the only article I've ever seen. This one's good. It cares about its credibility. Zombies do not exist, but The Walking Dead makes you believe they do. Basically, they just talk about how they want the continuity to make sense.
Yeah.
Which, if you're nitpicky, there are some continuity flaws here and there.
Yeah, I mean, every show's going to have that.
Yeah. Some of them in this episode we're going to talk about, but I don't think any of it makes me suspend.
No.
I am always suspending disbelief. I always find the show believable. And just like they're saying, like even, like you may be like, I don't know that all this could have happened within 24 hours. Well, it's like, bitch, zombies aren't real. Like,
right, exactly.
You have to suspend disbelief just to watch the show.
If that's what you're worried about, then, maybe you're analyzing a little too much.
And then the number reason. It doesn't have an end. I didn't read this, by the way, before we did it. I read the first couple and then I didn't read all the way to number 1. It doesn't have an end game. Perhaps the biggest reason the audience haven't checked out The Walking Dead yet is because it doesn't have some big dramatic ending that it's building towards. I think it totally does.
I do too.
Unlike Lost or The Killing or even Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead doesn't have a payoff.
Well, I mean, it's not,
Why are they saying this is the reason why people would watch it?
I mean, I guess because it could go on. I mean, maybe that goes into the unpredictability kind of thing, but I mean,
yeah,
I mean, every show has to have an end game.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, even The Sopranos got ribbed for having that just going to black screen thing. But
I've never watched that, by the way. Never seen it.
Right.
To be a TV show buff as much as I am, I've never watched The Sopranos.
Pretty good show.
It didn't really interest me when it was on the air. And
you'd probably like it if you went back and watched it or something.
I probably should.
I mean, but it's the same thing, even though it ended that way, it still had an end game. I mean,
And they're comparing it to The Killing, which got canceled before, and then Netflix picked it up in the last season. Sorry guys, it sucks.
Right.
Another AMC show though.
Yeah.
And it's a good show. It's a really good show, but it got canceled prematurely, and then it got picked up and relaunched, and the relaunch season doesn't live up to the previous season.
I was going to say, I watched the first season, and it was pretty good, I guess.
Like it's not terrible. Like, if you watch the whole thing, at least it has a little bit of closure, but the last season doesn't live up to the previous season.
But I mean, I definitely think the comic is still going, so you can say, well, I mean, there's not an end that's already been.
Yeah, but so I hope the show doesn't end anytime soon. I think we got a few more seasons, but the comic does have a place after, was it Fear Itself or whatever that's called? Something Fear?
Mm-hmm.
Something to Fear? I don't know. After that finale, and they do that gap in time, the TV show could end there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there is kind of like an ending, but it may not. It may keep going. So maybe this is what this is saying, is that the comic's not over. So no one knows how this ends.
And yeah, I mean, and even though that they're supposedly going to try to go to Washington to get Eugene to, save the world, I don't think that's the end game. I don't think that would be like how they would end the show, is some big happy, we just saved the world kind of thing.
I don't think he knows what he's doing anyway.
I don't think he knows what he's doing anyway either. But, you know, just because it doesn't, I guarantee you that Scott Gimple knows.
And Robert Kirkman
knows how they want the show to end.
Robert Kirkman probably already has an idea of how he wants it all to end.
Yeah, I was going to say the comic and the show.
And I hope they try to coincide it so that it happens, maybe not at the same time, but somehow.
But relatively close, yeah.
So I could see why that would be, but I could see why it would be a plus though that you don't know where the show's going. It's not like watching, like recently I watched the television show about the movie From Dusk Till Dawn, the From Dusk Till Dawn TV show. Mm-hmm. Oh, and I saw they're doing a 12 Monkeys show too.
I heard that too.
They announced that at New York Comic Con. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, I know how this is going to end. George Clooney rides off in the sunset. Like, I know how it's going to end because I've watched the movie. Right. Like, I like how The Walking Dead's not like that. Like, even though we have the comic, it doesn't mean we know how it's going to end because the comic hasn't ended. Plus, the show's different than the comic. So, exactly. I think that's what they're saying as a plus. And yeah, definitely. It's open-ended, but I guarantee you Robert Kirkman has a finale in mind, or at least some idea. Maybe he hasn't worked it all out. All right. So the MTV article, 7 characters who can't die on The Walking Dead. And then they put, but should. All right. So obviously, number 1, Rick Grimes. And again, just like this, I'm going to go through the list. I'm not going to read their article. If you want to read it word for word, go to mtv.com. But basically, they say Rick can't die because Rick is the main character.
I mean, I don't think that's a valid reason why someone can't die.
No, I mean, again, without spoiling too much, like Game of Thrones, you watch Game of Thrones, stuff happens. Yeah, and I think if any show were going to do it, I think it's unlikely, but if any show were going to do it, they could do it.
I mean, I think definitely the one thing is the group is small. So, I mean, you can't obviously kill off everybody because you wouldn't have a show. And the great thing about the show is character development.
That's another thing. This thing is like the list of the top 7. Right now, there's only like 7 people.
I was going to say, there's only like 7 to 10 people.
This list is bogus.
So, obviously, you can't kill 7 people and leave 3 people, left on the show.
The show's just going to be about Gareth.
But I mean, like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Road.
No.
It's like an apocalyptic.
It's based on Stephen King, right?
It's based on Cormac McCarthy.
Oh, okay.
But it's kind of that. It's a father-son after some kind of apocalypse, and they're walking, and trying to get somewhere. But I mean, it's kind of like that. The main character, he dies, and the son goes on, and that's got to be. I mean, if they could kill Rick off and have Carl pick up from there, they could kill Carl off. Yeah. And give another reason for Rick to become, Heisenrick kind of thing.
Ricksenberg. I have a funny story about the Carl death thing. So I was coming from New York. I was on the plane at 9:00. We got back home we flew down the fucking interstate. we were getting home in time to watch it because I was trying to catch it at 11:00 when it came on after The Talking Dead. Right. I got home at like 11:10. And I wasn't going to start in the
10 minutes in. Yeah, no, definitely not.
So I, allegedly I went to a Pirate Bay site and downloaded the movie. Well, in the comments on Pirate Bay, everybody's like, I hate you, like Deadpool 7779 or something like that. And everybody's just wishing this death upon this guy's family and just being terrible. And I'm like, what did this guy say? So I scroll down to this comment and it's I can't believe Carl died. And so I read that and I was like, fuck.
Oh man.
Did the show just get ruined? But obviously it was all a prank because Carl does not die.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I was before I even watched the episode, I was like, oh great. It just got spoiled for me. But really what went through my head was at least I could talk about it on the podcast.
There you
go. All right. So the number 2 person they say that can't die is Daryl Dixon. I'm surprised he's not number 1.
Well, I was going to say, and Rick, I think a couple seasons ago, Rick was kind of in that area where people kind of didn't like Rick very much.
Yeah, well, like during season 3,
season 2 into
he was
season
doing the
3, the whole
dictatorship.
thing.
Yeah.
And Daryl's always been
a likable
kind of
character,
a fan favorite. And I've said
I
on
like
the show
Daryl.
before.
Daryl's
I do too.
cool. Yeah.
He's the guy.
Norman Reedus is really good.
Norman Reedus is great, and the Walking Dead T-shirts that you see are Daryl stuff and all this stuff, and he's definitely a big marketing thing for them. But at the same time, he's not, and we've always said too, he's not in the comics, so he's a character they can kind of do what they want with him.
I think that's kind of why they're keeping him, is because they can do whatever they want to with him. He's got no backstory. But the whole idea that they can't kill him because fans love him, they'll totally.
And see,
I think they will.
I think they will too. And the reason I think they will is because people are so invested in him.
Yeah.
That his death
It'll be huge.
is going to be huge.
It'll be like Herschel.
It's going to be Herschel
worse.
times 10, I think. That episode, we were talking about the ratings for this. Could you remember the Daryl death episode would probably be the most watched show ever that they've had. I think he's definitely going to die.
I think it'll come at a perfect time though.
Right.
They'll wait and build it in the story in the perfect way.
Right.
Where you almost not want it to happen, but like you totally see why and it makes sense.
Yeah.
If he were to just if they just slid his throat at the beginning of this episode, they would have lost ratings.
That would have been
the wrong way to do it. But they can kill him. Like Daryl's not safe. And also I think Norman Reedus, just like we were saying with Lauren Cohan, he wants to do other things.
And he's already started doing other things.
Yeah, he's in, and Robert Kirkman's got him working.
Right, he's putting him in his own movie. So,
it could totally happen.
Yeah.
And I'm not wishing it upon him. I like Daryl. I want to see him for 3 more seasons, but I totally think it will.
Yeah, and I think
happen.
he will. I think it will be like a 2 or 3 more seasons down the road kind of thing.
Yeah, it may not be this season. Yeah, but it totally will happen. Michonne is not safe. Yeah, Michonne.
I don't see that.
I think she's just as popular as Daryl, or getting there anyway.
Right.
But yeah, just her character, they can only do so much with that character. Eventually they'll be ready to
right.
But
now that she doesn't have a sword, I mean, what good is she?
Yeah, I know. How's she going to get her sword back? I don't know. Tyrese, they're saying Tyrese.
See, Tyrese is definitely killable.
He's totally killable. He might die this season.
Right? Might be next episode.
Beth, I totally think Beth, because they're looking for her, they're not just gonna find her dead and be like, oh, well, that's.
Yeah. Look, there she is.
Yeah. But yeah, totally.
I mean,
I'm surprised she's still on the show.
I mean, I'm surprised that they're rating these people above Carl.
Well, Carl's next.
I was going to say Carl, Glenn, or Maggie. I mean.
Yeah, Carl's next. They say that you can't kill Carl. And I kind of agree with this. For Rick's character, he pretty much needs Carl there because a lot of Rick's development is based on Carl.
Right.
So I kind of think he's safer than the rest of the list so far. But he's not safe.
No.
Judith, I'm surprised Judith's still alive.
I was going to say Judith I'm pretty sure Judith will die at some point.
I did not predict Judith would still be on the show.
I did too. I thought she was going to die season 3. I mean.
And so who did they not mention? They didn't mention Maggie. They didn't mention Abraham. They didn't mention Eugene.
Or Glenn.
Like, this list is totally bogus.
Right. I mean, I would put Glenn and Maggie in that list over Tyrese and Michonne.
I think they just pulled names out of a hat.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, like, right now, as dark and bleak and everything as the show is, you got to have some sort of shining light kind of thing. And that's Glenn and Maggie.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like.
There's a time frame on it, though.
I mean, there is a time frame on it.
I love Glenn and Maggie, though.
Right.
I know it's coming, but when it happens, man.
Right, exactly. And, I think the main point about that whole thing is I don't think there's any characters that can't die.
I don't think there's a list. There's no way. I think MTV made, obviously, that's clickbait. And,
right, exactly.
And I fell for it. I clicked on it.
And we're talking about it.
But I mainly wanted to talk about that. Like, there's no way to make that list because I don't think anybody's safe.
If I had to pick one character, I would say it's Carl.
Yeah, because I just think, like we were saying about Michonne and Rick, there's other people's development that rely on Carl being there. Now, also, if Carl died, that would also, Rick would change based on that, but they're not ready to do that yet.
Right. Talking about like an end game kind of thing for the show.
Yeah.
I always see the end game for me is Rick dying and like, Carl's still there and he's like, you need to continue on kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it goes. Carl, like, picks up the mantle of being, the Rick-tator kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, it's fair game, I think.
Yeah.
They're going to do it, obviously, and again, they're not going to kill everybody at one time. They're not going to do anything like that, but the more characters they keep bringing in, somebody has to die.
Yeah. That's why they keep bringing in new people. So
right. And there's several new characters that are going to be introduced in the next few episodes.
Yeah.
There's no telling where it goes. And obviously, once they start going to Washington, there's obviously going to be more characters. So, I don't agree with that premise at all that people can't die.
No, not at all. And that's the good thing about the show. That's
right.
What people say carried over from the comic, and it's important that they keep that. So the last on the news docket, and then we get into the recap. But I thought it kind of segued into the recap is that The Walking Dead season 5 premiere set cable TV ratings records, with 17.3 million viewers, with 11 million of these viewers, being the demographic of 18 to 49.
And I think they said that too doesn't account for.
Well, it didn't count me.
Well, I was just saying,
Yeah.
It didn't account for people that recorded it. I think they said, that was live.
Wow.
Like
That's live
cable viewing. And I think because they said they were going to add in, the DVR kind of things, and that it might rival like
that's crazy.
NCIS, which is like
the top
22
rated
million.
show. Yeah,
and they said it kicked Big Bang Theory's ass, which was pretty interesting because Big Bang Theory's been like.
I hate that show.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
So many people like in my walk of life love that show. I freaking hate that show.
Yeah, but yeah, like I think they said last year's premiere was like a little over 16, and now they picked up over a million more viewers.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
and this was the most anticipated premiere. I couldn't wait.
I couldn't wait for it either.
Yeah. That was the longest wait between that. It was the worst. God, it was the worst.
It was the worst.
And I remember more people talking about it too. Than before. Like the hype for this season premiere was way, way higher than previous seasons.
We were talking about at work. Andrew was like, he's like, man, I caught up episode after episode back to back to catch up with it. And he's like, now I got to wait another fucking week to find the next episode.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I know. See, you get caught up, man. I can't wait for Sunday night. And he was like, we ought to come in and do some stuff Sunday night at work. And I was like, fuck that.
Yeah, I know. We're supposed to be doing that overnight to remodel the precinct. That's not happening until after The Walking Dead. Maybe after the mid-season finale, we'll do it.
But yeah, like the anticipation, the talk, all that stuff for this. Even, we talked about how all these spoiler sites, that wasn't prevalent even 2 seasons ago or last season.
I thought, and then also doing the show, I always have this like thing in the back of my mind where it's like, I'm a Walking Dead fan and I love podcasting, but is doing the podcast ruining the show for me? Because we're doing all these rumors and stuff before it comes out.
Right.
And it always turns out we're wrong about everything.
Exactly.
I don't even know why anybody listens to this shit.
Right? I looked at all these spoiler sites and I was
still don't know.
And I'm like, you see like, oh, okay, obviously these people are filming, so they're still on the show. Mm-hmm. But like we were saying, the premiere, the trailer was basically the first 4 minutes of the show.
Yeah.
Nothing else about the rest of the show other than like some explosions and stuff. Like I had no idea what was coming in that episode.
It's just like the way Terminus is open right now. It's probably closed, but like during the gap in the seasons, they did all their filming at Terminus and then they left it the way it was and left it open for people to just walk in. I I think that they knew that sort of thing's going on. And the same thing with the spoiler sites.
Right.
I think they know what they're revealing and what they're not revealing. I think it's all intentional.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's like all these spoiler things. Not one time did anybody say, "Oh, hey, whatever the guy's name, Morgan, we saw him on set."
Yeah. Nobody mentioned Morgan.
Yeah, I mean, like, and so
they probably made him wear that mask the whole time.
Right. They let them. I think they let
know
them see what they want them to see, and then
they know what they're doing.
But like, I saw this, and I can't remember who was doing the contest, but the contest, if you won, you had a choice of something. One of the choices was you get to go on a trip to go see Terminus.
Oh yeah, no.
And I was like,
you could just show up in Atlanta and walk in.
Show up and walk in from what everyone else said.
We're not saying that you can do that. Like legally, I think it's private property. You can't do that, but you can totally do it. It's been done.
I've seen it. I have proof. So that brings us to the actual episode, which
just here's my. I was thinking about calling, and we still might. The name of this episode is going to be Damn. WTF. The opening of this show.
The episode, No Sanctuary was the name of the episode.
Yeah, No Sanctuary. The opening of this episode was probably the most intense open that they've ever done.
Right.
Well, the open was the whole like then now thing. It opens with then, which I thought was cool because I remember during the filming of season 4, or during the just showing of season 4, Scott Gimple said a few times that he liked the way Lost did the whole flashback story thing.
Right.
And then we saw it in the final episode. Almost just the way it is.
Right.
And then,
which he said in The Talking Dead after this, you're going to see a lot more, or not a lot more, but you're going to see that throughout this season.
Yeah.
So.
And we kind of predicted that it would be the terminus. Right. So we were right on that prediction. So we do get some things right. But it starts out with the then. I like how it's like then and now.
Right.
It's indiscriminate. So like, there's no
Who knows when this takes place.
Who knows when it happens. They show inside the boxcar and
Gareth,
Alex, Mary, a young girl.
Yeah, some other worn down, beaten down people.
They said, we never should have put up the signs. Someone says that to Gareth. I don't know who that person is.
I think that was Alex.
It might have been Alex, yeah. We were trying to do something good, Gareth says, and he says, we're still human. Like he's doing the whole thing like we see Glenn doing, where,
right.
He's like, we still have to hold on to our humanity kind of thing.
He still sees the best in people,
Yeah. And
which, if you kind of go along with Rick, Rick was all, trying to do the same thing at the beginning, but now Gareth kind of, if you want to say Rick evolved, Gareth definitely evolved, even though you don't see it, but
I think we'll definitely see more of it. Like Scott Gimple did a really good job of that with the governor, where it seemed like the previous showrunner, we had all of season 3, and we really didn't see much of like what made the governor who he was until season 4, but anyway, and then it goes to now, which is the group in the boxcar making weapons.
In which we can determine, it essentially is probably 20, 30 minutes after they got put in that boxcar. It was pretty much
not long.
Right then.
Yeah, it had to be almost right away.
Right.
Which is a little unbelievable because it's like they just immediately started making all these crazy,
they didn't know who they were fucking with.
Right. Let's see. They had some dialogue over this. I didn't write it down.
Right. They're, talking about Rick was, I think, just basically saying we got to get ready for when these people come because they could hear them. And I think they thought they were getting ready to come through the door. And then, of course, the top of the boxcar opens up and the little smoke can comes in.
I didn't expect the top to open up.
Right. And then the guy yells, get to the back of the car and put your backs up on the wall or whatever. And, Abraham and Rick and all of them are like, yeah, come through the store and kick your ass.
Yeah. I do love how they show, and again, this is like from the teaser, And I didn't think it was going to show up this soon in the episode, but they showed the scene from the teaser where Rick hits his head on the ground.
Yeah.
And then the guy's picking him back up. I love how the guy's got like blood on his face and he's like wiping like blood off of his nose. Like,
right. Rick did something. Yeah.
He probably headbutted the guy or something like that.
And then, you know, one of the things that they showed too, which kind of like a little foreshadowing, you know, they showed Rick like cutting the thing off with the chain. And then like when they show the boxcar again, you see that piece of wood's missing.
Yeah. Which how long that would take long. That would take a while to cut that with that chain.
But you got to suspend belief. There are zombies.
There's no fucking zombies. Yeah.
But it immediately goes into a scene where they're like, they throw Rick down on the ground, zip tie him, and they bend him over this big trough. And then you see him bring on all these other people.
This is what I was referring to by the most intense opening. Because it got to this fast.
It did. It got right off the bat. And of course you see, I guess this is, you know, after Rick had been, you know, slammed his head on the concrete and everything. So you kind of see like him coming to being drug in and the camera's not quite focused, but you can see a dude and you can definitely tell he's got some kind of saw or something and there's a body.
Cutting some guy up. Yeah.
You know, I think the realization dawns on Rick and Rick stays pretty damn calm. And, you know, I think the whole time, obviously the show, you know, he's going to survive, but the character, I think he knew that somehow he was going to get out of this. And I don't think he had any doubt that he wasn't going to get out of this.
Yeah, Rick, you know, and he even tells, later on in the scene, he even tells Gareth that he's going to kill him with the red-handled machete.
And the interesting other thing is, okay, so there's 8 people lined up at this trough. So
4
Rick,
from A, 4 from D.
A, 4 from D.
Yeah.
And so they put Rick down first, and then they show Daryl get thrown down, and then, I think they throw Glenn, but then like, Bob comes in, they put him right at the front. Yeah. So luck of the draw, Bob doesn't get to be one of the back ones. So, you know, obviously they start at the end and you see Rick, you know, kind of look down the line, like, you know, who are all these people? And he sees a hippie dude from
season 4. I don't remember the episode number, but yeah.
Right. And, you know, we had always talked about what the hell happened to that dude.
Yeah.
So now we know. You know, they kind of showing all that and you know, they recognize each other and they're kind of like, hey, you know, we're fucked kind of thing. And the dude's like so nonchalantly back behind him, like practicing his swing with the baseball bat. And you're just like, oh man, this is not going to go well for somebody.
Yeah.
And,
God, it's so crazy. But the thing about it is, I don't think the show's making any kind of statement about like, you know, meat eaters or anything, but it is so like systematic the way they would like, you know, slaughter pigs or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they
just hit him in the back of the head, slit the throat, let him bleed out.
And then move on to the next guy. And which was what they did. They hit Blondie, they slit his throat, moved to the next guy, did the same thing. And then they, you know, get to Glenn and then Gareth walks in, you know, and they show like, you know, you can see Daryl and you can see Glenn. They're just like, you know, I think maybe they kind of came to the realization, okay, this is it. You know, we're going. I don't think, like I said, I don't think Rick did ever.
Well, they show Rick trying to cut
right.
Which is like, there's no way you're cutting plastic with wood. I don't think that's possible. But
again, zombies.
But I do think it's possible if he made some sort of tourniquet or something like that
and
out
just
of
kind of snapped it.
Yeah, because the plastic teeth, we worked with a guy that went through Sears training in the military, and he was saying that with enough force the plastic teeth will give. Yeah. Right. And so he could have done something to kind of leverage it and maybe get just enough teeth loose that he could pull his hands out. Right. So I think it's possible.
I think it's possible. And you know, that came after when they're you know, those guys are distracted. And so obviously he could do more, but yeah. You know, the guy's getting ready to, you know, pummel Glenn and then Gareth walks in and it's just like, you know, he's got a clipboard like he's an office manager. Yeah. And even Scott Gimple said in Talking Dead afterwards, it was like an episode of The Office. You know, it was like
the dialogue was meant to be.
It was like business as usual. Hey, you know, why didn't you do your TPS reports? You know, kind of thing. It was, you know, why didn't you did you pick up your shells?
Yeah.
Why didn't you pick up your shells and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, they're kind of going back and forth, and you can see them looking around like, you know, you guys are really talking like this.
Yeah.
You're just slaughtering people right
it's
here.
So crazy.
And
it's
then,
so crazy.
Yeah, I know, right? And, you know, meanwhile, there's like blood coming down the trough, and they're all looking at it too. And
yeah, to me, this totally felt like a scene from the later issues of the comic. Like, like to me, it just felt so like there's a certain way that Robert Kirkman sometimes, can tell the sort of the story of like unrelenting like force. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but like the moment where you're like, there's no way out of this. Like, this is completely unrelenting. There's no way.
Right.
There's no way I can just muscle my way out of this situation. You know, like, it's fucked.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think
this scene felt that way. So
I think Stookie knew that. And, you know, so Stookie's like, you know, he's going to try anything he can. And, you know, and it kind of surprised me
that Gareth even talked
to him.
It was the bag of guns.
I think so too. And at the same time, I don't understand. I think he would have just gone to Rick. And I think in the show, they, you know, Rick was, I forgot what Gareth called him, but, you know, it was samurai, archer.
I don't remember what Rick was.
Yeah. But he called him Bob.
He called Stookie Bob.
He did call Stookie Bob.
I don't know how he knew Bob's
name. That was kind of weird. That kind of threw me too. Because
I thought about that.
I think the whole thing with those names was not to humanize them.
Yeah.
And it kind of shows you that even if he did know his name, it still didn't matter. And of course, you know, with the whole body that was on the slab. But anyway, like, so Bob tries to talk him. He's like, hey, you know, we can fix all this. You don't have to do this. And it's kind of the same thing with Rick and the governor. The Rick's, you know, we can do this. And Bob's just like, you know, or Gareth is just like, you know, it's too late. You know, we can't, there's no going back, Bob, is, you know, kind of what he says.
Yeah. And, which I thought was kind of neat because, you know, the season 4,
the theme
was like, what can we come back from? Yeah. And that was probably done on purpose. But
but so like then
basically they were saved because of the bag of guns.
Right. Cause Bob or Gareth asked, you know, hey, Rick, you know,
I think it was planned. I think it was.
Oh, I definitely think Rick was in that lineup.
Yeah.
For that purpose. Now I don't think anybody else, I think the other ones were just random.
They were just people. Yeah.
But I think he put Rick in there for that sole purpose.
And I think that they were the last 4 because he wanted them to see the first 4.
Right.
So that maybe he would have a better chance of getting the guns. And, but before we went on the air, you were mentioning that it's weird that Gareth even knew about the guns. Which is weird.
Because I mean, for me, if I'm in Terminus and I'm one of these spotters and I do see these people coming down the tracks with a big bag.
It seems like they would have a system for like, you know.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you know, Rick's like, hey, we're not going to go in the front door. Let's go into the woods. But you would think, okay, I'm guessing that the spotter sees them on the tracks. But as soon as they go into the woods, wouldn't you think they'd be like, okay, these people aren't coming straight down the tracks. They're going to the woods. Let's find out where the hell they're going.
Yeah. Why would he wait to tell Gareth?
Yeah,
until after they snuck in,
right? And obviously Gareth and those people in that room were surprised that they showed up.
Yeah.
So that kind of, you know, I was kind of like, well, but you know, I guess it was maybe, you know, afterwards when they showed up, maybe some guys like, oh yeah, that's those people that were walking down the tracks and they had a big bag with them.
Yeah.
So you know, Gareth questions Rick, you know, tell me about what's in the bag.
It may be that they got to Gareth before Gareth got word from the spot.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, the guy, Gareth threatens to kill Bob unless he tells him. And, you know, Rick's not saying anything. He's not going to do anything. And then finally he's like, you know, yeah, we got AK-47s. We've got 44 Magnums. We got, this, that, and the other. And then the last thing is I got a machete with a red handle that I'm going to kill you with.
That's what I'm going to kill you with. I wonder why he chose that one.
Right.
It's more personal.
Because I was going to say it's more, it's more brutal. And you can, Garrett's kind of like, yo, shut the hell up, dude. You're getting ready to get your throat cut. I'm just asking you these questions. We'll find the bag eventually.
So before we get to the conclusion of this scene, who did you think was going to die in this scene?
I thought Bob was dead.
I thought Bob was dead as shit. Yeah.
Because that was one of the whole spoiler things was everybody's like, oh, there's the picture with Bob bent over and his eyes are closed. He's dead. And I'm like, oh yeah, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
I really thought it could happen. I thought Bob might die and I wasn't 100% safe on Glenn.
On Glenn, right.
I would be shocked if they killed Glenn first episode like that with no build up, but yeah, Bob, they could have totally done it with. I'm surprised that Bob made it out.
Me too.
It almost would have been, I don't want to say it would have been better because they must have more plans for Stookie, but if they were gonna kill somebody because they wanted you to feel even more unsure about Glenn. Right. Like if they had killed Stookie and then grabbed Glenn next, you'd be like, fuck.
Yeah,
Glenn
he's going down. Right. And it was literally, it was the guy had the bat cocked back getting ready to clock Glenn.
Yeah.
And then the gunfire.
Yeah.
And then, everyone's like, what the hell's going on? Gareth is kind of looking around and he's like, just stick to what you're doing. I'm going to go find out what's going on. And then, they leave and then boom.
You hear the big bang.
The big bang.
And I thought someone went back and got the tank. I thought someone went back and got the tank or someone all along had been, like I was trying to think of a character that we had forgotten about, you know, like Morgan.
Right.
He discovered the tank at the prison and drove it all the way down to Terminus or something. I didn't know what happened.
Now one of the spoiler things, I knew that the
gas
propane tanks blow up and stuff. So I kind of was like, there's the explosion thing, but it still didn't.
It didn't hit me right away.
It didn't tell me exactly what happened.
Yeah.
In which, there's the bang and then, the next thing goes over to.
It goes to credit or it goes to the opening sequence.
Yeah.
Which we got a new opening sequence, but.
Right.
I looked at it and, sometimes there's the opening sequence changes per season and sometimes you get like glimpses of places maybe they're going to go.
Right.
But it didn't.
It's kind of, it's pretty vague.
It's pretty vague. Like if it had been like city, like season 1 had a lot of Atlanta shots in it.
Right.
And if it had been city, then we could be like, oh, well, maybe they're going to get to Alexandria quicker than we thought. But nah, nothing like that.
So then it picks up with, Carol and Tyrese walking down the railroad tracks, with Judith and, they're just kind of going along and then Carol's like, I will get you to Terminus, but I'm not going to stay. I'm going to move on.
Which I thought was,
that's kind of weird.
Odd.
Yeah. I mean, cause when they left the Grove, it was kind of like, you kind of felt like they were, I'm not going to say a couple, but they were kind of like invested with each other.
Yeah.
So that was kind of odd that she said she was going to move on.
I wonder why she's not comfortable in that environment.
Yeah, I know.
She's almost more comfortable surviving.
And the way Tyrese was kind of acting, maybe she was like, I don't know if I can, maybe we're just too different to be together. I got to do what I got to do to survive, and maybe Tyrese can't do these things.
Yeah.
But
would she have to do those types of things if Terminus was what she thought it was?
Right, right. Maybe she just likes it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think maybe she is happier doing the survival thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But then a walker comes out out of the woods onto the tracks, and Tyrese is like, I can't do it. Still can't do it. So Carol goes up and takes care of it, and then she sees like a big herd of walkers in the woods, and they hide.
So Tyrese is kind of reverting back to where we saw him when they first introduced the character.
Right.
He was, he only killed him if he had to.
Right.
And there's even, I think back to the scene where he's in the car and he's just got that moment where he's like, I don't want to do this.
He's sitting anymore. In the car like, yeah. And then he gets out and goes all berserker, Tyrese.
Yeah. So after killing the little girl incident, it's kind of like he's reverting back to that,
Yeah, definitely. And, so they, they see the big herd and they hide behind this bank, and then the walkers are getting ready to come toward them, and then you hear a bunch of gunfire.
Yeah.
Which we kind of said that's where
it's probably them hurting the group.
We're herding the group to the train car.
Now, I was kind of thinking, because this gives a time frame, and this is why we think it was such a such a short time frame since the last season, is because they hear the gunfire, and then they go to that cabin, and then from the cabin they go to, and that couldn't have took more than a few hours. You know?
Exactly.
So
and obviously they didn't put Rick and them in that train car and then like lock the door and then get up on top of the train car and throw a smoke bomb in there.
It had to be.
So it had to be in a little bit of time.
Right.
And they had to have that time to make the weapons kind of thing. So, I mean, it
kind of matches up. It just, I was
definitely
thinking, if there's a dilemma, we could go with the conclusion that they're herding some other group to another train car.
Right.
It may not necessarily be them, but I think it's implied that it was.
Right.
Because whenever they get to the cabin, the guy is talking about them on the headset.
Yeah. So which is the next thing. So it flashes to this guy.
That guy was good, by the way.
Yeah, he was. And I've seen him in some stuff. And I meant to look it up and see what he was in, but I've seen him. He's
good.
Like, he's kneeling down. He's got fireworks, and you're just kind of like, fireworks? What the hell's going on with fireworks?
Yeah.
And he's on the radio, and he says something about the samurai, and he's talking about Michonne, and then he says, "Oh, and I really want that boy's hat after they bleed him out."
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, that's pretty brutal. And then next thing you know, there's a gun at his head, and it's Carol, and she's like, well, the samurai and the boy are our friends.
Yeah.
And
I thought that was pretty ingenious the way because like all that gunfire, that was one of the things that we talked about at the end of the last season, was like all that gunfire.
The gates are open and all that stuff.
But they used the fireworks to lure zombies.
To lure them back away.
To strategic places. Yeah. And that guy was kind of like their Glenn.
Right. He's the guy that goes out and does all the
and then tries to dodge the zombies on the way back home. Yeah.
And he's kind of looks like Glenn. He's got the hat on and all that stuff.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
I just thought of that just now. So they tie him up and everything, put him in the cabin, and she's like, Carol's like, I'm going to go to Terminus, and Tyrus is like, what are you going to do? And she's just like, I'm going to kill him.
Yeah. I don't see why Carol didn't just to kill the guy in the cabin.
I don't either. That was kind of weird because the way she had been.
I think she would have done it.
And I think he made a valid point when he was talking with Tyrese later. It's like, why haven't you killed me? It makes no advantage to you.
Yeah. Why are you even talking to me?
Yeah. I don't understand that either. But I mean, obviously it was to bolster Tyrese's character. But, so anyway, Carol, goes off to, rescue whoever, she obviously doesn't know exactly who's alive, but she knows they're there.
Yeah.
And leaves Tyrese and Judith at this cabin with the dude.
And it's interesting to think about this too. We haven't brought up the fact that she hasn't ran into Rick. She hasn't ran into the group since they kicked her out. She could have been just like, fuck them.
Right. But she's going to a compound.
Yeah.
By herself to rescue them. So it says a lot about her.
That's
too.
pretty impressive, actually.
She's brutal, but she's still loyal.
Yeah. That's pretty
right.
Legit.
So then it shows Carol out in the woods next to a walker, and she's like, doing the whole dripping blood, and
we haven't seen since Guts, the episode Guts.
Yeah.
Well, we saw Michonne kind of had the same thing with her walkers. But yeah, it's more like the premise from the episode Guts, which was Carol. Was Carol in that episode? She was with the group.
She was with the
but
group.
That was when they were still in the city.
In the city.
And I don't think she was in the city.
No, I think she was at the...
She was at the camp.
Because that was back when she still had
her husband
and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Little meek lady. Then it goes back to the cabin with Tyrese and the guy, and he's like, what's your name? What's the baby's name?
Is he a friend of yours?
Is that is that your baby? He's like, no, it's a friend.
Yeah.
It's like,
can you really consider a baby a friend?
Right. That's what I thought that too. I was like, friend?
It's not like they've done anything together.
Is that your baby? And, you know, the guy kind of, and I said it before, I don't think he wanted Tyrese to kill him, but I think he was kind of like, why aren't you killing me?
Yeah.
You know, what point am I serving you? And if you're not going to kill me, guess what? You're going to be dead.
Yeah.
The baby's going to be dead, because I think he knew at that point that Tyrese didn't have the stones to do it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's kill or be killed at this point.
I think he was trying to get under his skin, but I also think that there was probably a little bit of like, because he seemed like he was maybe a little tired of doing what he was doing.
Right.
He kind of reminded me of the character from season 2, the young guy that they found at the bar.
Yeah.
He kind of reminded me of him, where he's like, you know, I got with these people to survive. They're not my friends. We just survived together.
Yeah.
And
well, he says that. He's like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't have friends. I'm just here to survive.
I like whenever he talks about how he remembers watching football and going to church
and stuff.
And he's like, I know I used to. It's hard to imagine it now, or something like that.
Right.
Like, I think that Tyrese, I think he was trying to get under Tyrese's skin. I'm not trying to make the guy out to be like a misunderstood.
Right.
Like, the guy was totally.
He's all emo.
Yeah. Like, but I think that there was like kind of like a little bit of glimpse of like, he's tired of doing what he's doing. And Tyrese almost represents, a symbol of, had he have not made the choices that he made, what he might be.
Right.
And he's just, just kind of like, not necessarily pissed at Tyrese because of that, but I think he realizes like, you're the type of guy that saves a baby, is what he says.
Yeah.
And like, he probably always thought he would be that type of guy. And then in the certain circumstances, he wasn't.
Right.
He wasn't strong enough to be that.
And, he tells him, he's like, hey, what are you doing? Why
I
are
thought
you
that was
here?
interesting. You could get in the car and leave.
You get in the car and leave. He's like, you got a baby. Get in the car and leave.
That actually is really interesting.
That is really interesting.
On different levels. Why would he just go ahead and tell him, get in the car and leave? Maybe he's thinking, well, if he leaves, I can get up and then try to contact.
Right.
And why didn't Tyrese do it?
Right.
Like, Tyrese, he probably didn't do it because like I was saying, he probably was like, well, if I leave, this guy could radio back, and then Carol's dead, and then everybody's dead.
And I don't want to leave Carol.
And he's thinking, I don't want to leave Carol. But at the same time, he could save Judith by doing that.
Right.
So it's kind of a weird dilemma that they really didn't play on a whole lot.
And I guess, I would think, from the way it played out, I assume that Tyrese just thought that this guy was, wasn't going to be able to do anything. But like, Tyrese is over at the wall looking out the window.
Yeah.
At the, he hears the explosion and he's looking out, and the guy's like, is that Terminus? And then next thing you know, he jumps up and he's at the baby, cooler, like, threatening to kill the baby. And I thought, then I'm like, man, did they leave this guy with the capability of jumping up?
Yeah.
And doing that, and the baby sitting right next to him? That was kind of weird too.
They were kind of limited in what they had. They had him tied up with like a seatbelt.
Right.
But yeah, I think Tyrese let his guard down.
I think he did too.
And I think that's what the guy was doing was
doing all that.
Yeah.
And, and the guy, he says, either you or me is basically going to die. Either you're going to kill me, or you and the baby are going to die today.
Yeah.
And then when the guy does jump up and, grab the baby, he's like, my first thought is, okay, the guy's just got his hands on the baby. You've got a gun. I guarantee you could shoot him in the head faster than he could kill Judith. Now, maybe he just didn't want to do it, or for whatever reason. But the guys, we're kind of jumping ahead, but, the guy's like, I don't want to do all this today. This is not the day to do it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where they leave that.
Well, they do the thing where, it's fine if we tell that whole story.
Right.
So, like, they do the whole thing where he's telling him to go outside, but at this point, the little shack is getting attacked by zombies. Like 3 or 4 zombies, something like that.
And my thing is too, is like, okay, so he's got his hands around, and you have the choice. You can either try and kill him, and at this point, you know, he won't kill a walker, and so is he really going to try and kill this guy?
Yeah.
But if you do throw down your knife and your gun, and you do what he says and go outside, and I mean, I don't understand why he thinks that that's going to help Judith at all, because he already said either I'm going to die or you and the baby are going to die. He didn't say either I'm going to die and you're going to die and I'll take the baby back to the terminus and live happily ever after. So that's kind of threw me too. I don't understand why he did what he did to try and save Judith.
Well, it's kind of like he doesn't trust him, but he feels like he will kill Judith if he doesn't.
Right.
So it's kind of like he's faced with the known of he'll kill her if I don't go outside.
Right.
And the unknown of like he may or may not.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe he just goes for the walkie and leaves Judith, warns, you know, whatever.
Well, you figure he wouldn't kill, and you figure he wouldn't like kill Judith right then, even if, you know, Tyrese went out and immediately was killed.
Yeah.
You know, he's not going to be like, okay, well, he's dead. I'm going to kill the baby and then take it back to Terminus. You would think that he would go back to Terminus with a live baby and go,
yeah, I would think
this
so.
This is what I have.
Cause like the Terminus people seem to be bent on like survival at any cost and not wasting.
Right. I couldn't see them
just killing babies for the fun of it.
I was going to say, I couldn't see them just killing the baby.
Yeah.
They've got plenty of people locked up in train cars. And
yeah.
You know, even later in the episode when Carol and Mary are talking, she's like, you know, with Gareth says it too in the episode, is like, you have a chance when you first get here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't take the chance, you're in a boxcar. If you do, you're one of us kind of thing. And so I mean, I don't think, now the guy might have been batshit crazy too and just killed the baby and never.
Yeah.
But I think
my favorite thing about that scene though is that the door, so you see a zombie in each window and the zombie getting to the door, and Tyrese is more scared of him hurting the baby
than the
zombies going out the door. And so he's backing up, you know, terrified, facing away from the zombies. He's terrified of him hurting
opens the door with his back to it.
And opens the door with his back to it and walks out. That's my favorite thing about that scene, just because the real threat is the human inside with the baby and not the walkers outside.
Right.
Like he's more terrified of what's going on inside the cabin than the walkers beating on the door outside. That was like one of my favorite scenes from the whole. My favorite scene was the trough scene at the beginning.
Right.
But that was, other than that was my favorite scene of the whole show, because he's more worried about Judith's safety than his own.
Right. And then, you know, obviously he gets out there, the door shuts, and then he goes into berserker mode, apparently.
Tyrese seems to bottle it up.
Yeah.
And then it just boils over. Yeah. He is the biggest and the most violent person in the group.
Oh, definitely.
But he's also the most passive.
Right.
And it just builds up and then just explode, and he just kind of go into this blackout rage.
Right.
And then, I think he, cause they show this, after the scene, they showed the zombies outside and they're like stuck on a post.
And you see like that when the dude's still inside, like the wall caves in.
Yeah.
And you're like, holy crap. And you know, he's thinking the same thing, like, what the fuck just happened out there? And you know, when Tyrese comes back through the door and tackles the guy, when I saw that thing with the wall, I was dead sure that he was going to come through the wall.
Oh, through the wall.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, oh, Tyrese is going to pull like a Hulk move and just smash.
He pulls a Kool-Aid.
Yeah, Kool-Aid. Yeah. And like, but yeah, I mean, like then, you know, he comes smashing through the door, tackles the guy.
And again, I knew he was going to just black out, and he pound the guy's face.
You know, he hits him one time and the guy kind of like rocks and he's out of it. And then he says, he keeps saying like, I'm not going to do, or not today, or something like that.
I'm not going to do it.
Meanwhile, he's just pummeling the dude's face. Yeah. And, you know, at that point, you know, the guy's dead.
Yeah. I knew he was going to ruin that guy. It reminded me of the end of the first season of Orange is the New Black. Have you watched that show?
No, I haven't seen it.
the very last scene of that show is a similar scene where like one of the characters is just, you see from the perspective of the person getting pounded on, and you can just see that they've lost sanity for a moment. Like they're just pounding the ground at this point. They don't even know what they're hitting anymore.
Right.
And like he was in that mode.
Oh, definitely. But it goes back to, with Carol. She's walking along with the herd.
That was cool too.
That was cool. And, we saw some pictures, before the season started, and everyone was like, hey, that looks like Carol.
Yeah.
Well, it was Carol.
It was Carol.
So she's, and it's pretty ballsy too when you're coming up on a compound, which obviously is guarded.
Yeah.
And
they're going to be shooting the zombies.
Right.
You're dressed like a zombie.
And you walk right up. So, she sees like the herd kind of get to there, and like the people at the fences trying to kill them. And then like the people at the fences realize that there's way more than they thought there were. And, they kind of retreat, and she sees the big propane tanks and everything laying out there. And, she's got the idea, I'm going to shoot the tank. And even though, so she shoots the tank, it starts spraying, then she shoots the bottle rocket, and somehow manages
magically hits it. Yeah.
What's funny is that like most of the times in most shows, you'd see someone shoot the tank with a gun and it would blow up.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, that can never happen.
Yeah.
But yet they shoot the tank and it starts spraying, and then they do the thing that could never happen with the bottle rocket.
Yeah. They're like, oh, no one's ever going to believe that a bullet would just blow up a tank. So we're going to shoot a bottle rocket at it.
And not at it, up in the air.
Yeah. And I think if she had like a dozen bottle rockets, I think she could eventually do it.
Right.
But the first one, and she didn't even aim it.
Because they show her, she just kind of sticks the gun through whatever hole's the best one.
Heat-seeking bottle rocket.
Right. And and I'm thinking, okay, that thing's pointing up in the air. And I've shot bottle rockets before, and they go way up in the air. And she was a distance away, but that thing should have way overshot that. But, obviously they're zombies, so you have to suspend belief. And, the bottle rocket hits the spray, blows up, and then that kind of ties into the time frame where
I would have more believed like a Molotov cocktail.
Right.
Like maybe there was a bottle of wine in the cabin, and she stuffs it with a rag and throws it. And it blows up. Like she shoots it, does the gas thing, and then throws it on the side of the tank.
Right.
I would believe that. They should have done that. The bottle rocket thing was cool, and I'm okay with it.
My thing is with the bottle rocket thing is I would have been perfectly okay with it if she would have picked the gun up
and aimed
the bottle rocket at the thing.
I think it's totally doable. But
definitely.
I think you'd have to aim it correctly. I think you would have to spend time, and it would take you more than one try.
Right.
Even with aiming it. Because I've done the whole thing as a kid where you light it and then you let go just in time. You point at your friend and then let go. And it kind of goes where you want it to.
Right.
But it's not, it's not heat seeking.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing blows up, and then, that kind of ties back into where Rick and all them are in the trough room, and, the explosion and everything. But anyway, so she blows that up and, makes her way back around, to the herd again to kind of enter Terminus. And then, that kind of, again, then the scenes flash back to in the room, and they're all laying there. The bat guy and the knife guy are kind of down, and the knife guy's freaking out, what's going on?
Yeah.
And he's trying to radio Gareth, and he can't get anybody. And the other guy's just hey, we got a job to do. Let's just do our job. Yeah. No big deal. There's explosions.
Which is pretty crazy because, it seems like there'd be, but then again, we're thinking about it this is right after the scene at the beginning of the show where the explosion happens and then Gareth just left the room.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we kind of think about it all this time has passed where Carol's been shooting people, but that happened while they were in there. Yeah. So,
well, and the thing is too, is with the bald guy, the bat guy, he's just hey, let's just finish our job. We got this to do. an explosion and a bunch of gunfire is like a normal thing too.
Yeah.
It's like, I would be with the other guy, like, what the hell's going on? This is, you know, we're at Terminus. This doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so he starts freaking out. And that's when they're showing, you know, Rick trying to, you know, undo the zip ties. And the guy's like, you know, like, hey, look at me. And the dude turns around. Next thing you know, Rick's like,
he came
jabbing him, shanking him in the neck.
Yeah.
And,
it was so perfectly.
And what's crazy is he shanks the bat guy and kills him. The other dude's got a freaking huge knife and Rick's got a piece of wood.
Yeah.
And Rick kills the shit out of him.
But he's just in awe.
Yeah, he's just like, it's kind of like when Rick bites the neck, all the other people are like, holy crap, you know? And so, you know, Rick kills the crap out of this dude and, you know, frees everybody else. And then it's like, they kind of, at that point, I mean, you know, they obviously saw the room, and then they kind of take stock of the room, and they're just like, wow. And then they show the person on the slab,
which is Alex,
which is Gareth's brother, which even shows more of how, like, non-emotional, like, how this is not, and Scott Gimple said in Talking Dead, he's like, it's not personal, it's just business.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, hey, that's my brother, but that's also dinner for the next couple of days or whatever. You know, we're not going to waste anything, you know, kind of thing. And it shows you kind of the person that Gareth is, you know, what they're dealing with. You know, I think that's one of the things too, you know, when they escape that room, they go into what's called the smokehouse room where they got the meat hanging from the hooks and the grill and all this stuff. And as shocking as that is, I think it's still, even Rick seeing that was, now I don't think Rick knows that's his brother, but Rick knows it was one of the main people.
Yeah, because he talked to him whenever they first came in. Yeah.
And, you know, Rick seeing that this guy is on the table, I think that's one of the reasons too why Rick is saying,
it would be like if Glenn
people.
Died and then they were like, well, we can eat Glenn. You know? Like,
so I think that's one of the reasons too why Rick wants to kill everybody. Cause, you know, if these people can do this to one of their main people, why should we let anybody live? Cause they're obviously not going to give a shit about us.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, they go into that room, you know, they see all this stuff and then they escape, out into they see the box car and they hear people in the box car.
Yeah.
And that's when Glenn's like, you know, we've got to save these people. You know, that's who we are.
Yeah.
And, you know, they go out and
I like how he said it. It has to be.
It has to be.
It has to be who we are.
Yeah.
And I think it's because Glenn sees this as, we don't want to turn into these people.
Right.
You know, like we have to hold on to whatever that is that makes us still want to help these people. Like, it's important that we keep that.
You know, we knew what we were inside that boxcar. How could we leave other people inside them? And obviously, Terminus is going to shit regardless of what happens. Either, you know, more Terminus people get killed or they get killed.
Now, that might be why they decided to go back, because here's the thing is,
how many people did they leave in other boxcars?
Exactly, yeah. Because that's what I keep thinking about is, based on the Comic-Con trailer, we know that they're going to meet up with Gareth again. There's actually scenes with Gareth with the group,
them,
like talking to Carl, holding Judith. Like, there's a lot of scenes with him. And the way this episode ends, I don't see how that could happen, but I wonder if they decided to go back.
Well, that's why I'm thinking, because, you know, even at the beginning, they say, 4 from A, 4 from D.
Yeah.
Well, what about B and C?
Yeah.
What about the rest of the people in D?
Yeah.
I mean, even if the people from Terminus were just giving them powdered milk and whatever to eat to keep them alive.
Yeah.
They're not even going to get that because everybody in Terminus is pretty much dead.
Yeah.
So you're going to leave these people to just die in these cars. Now, maybe that's just something they're not
I don't
thinking
know
about, but yeah, I mean, but anyway, they go to this box car, they open it up. Freaking crazy dude comes running out.
Charles Manson,
tattoo crazy beard and hair. And, he grabs, and says, "We're the same."
Yeah. We're the same.
I don't know what that means. Because there's no way that, my first thought was, oh, we're the same. We both came from boxcars. But then how the hell did that guy know that they were in a boxcar? They could have just been other termites opening the door, but he's like backs away, and the next thing you know,
what if he means, so either A, I'm saying he means, we're the same as in the walkers. We're the same. There is a scene in the comic where Rick says like, they're talking about, they call it the walkers and the dead. And he's like, we are the walking dead. Like, there's that scene. But there's also, this episode talked a lot about you're either the butcher or you're the cattle.
Right.
What if we're the same?
Yeah,
what if
the
you're
butcher and the cattle. Well,
yeah.
Obviously the cattle turns into the butchers.
Yeah.
Because, that's how Terminus became.
Yeah.
So the guy, says we're the same. He gets killed by the walker. Then it goes back to Carol, where she goes into the room with all the assorted stuff that, people they had collected.
Yeah. Going back to like the Nazi thing. So this reminded me of the scene in the movie, Monuments Men, where it's pretty good. It's not the best movie ever, but it's pretty good.
Right.
In the movie Monuments Men, where they go and they find, the Nazi, like, where they were hiding all the art and stuff, and they find this room full of these like jars of gold teeth, where they had taken the gold teeth out of the Jews.
Right.
And it's just these giant, like, Walter White sized barrels of gold teeth, and there's this room full of them. And it kind of reminded me of that. There's a lot of stuff that I don't know if it was done intentional, but like, box cars.
Right.
Like there's a lot of stuff that kind of like reminded me of symbolism between, the like concentration camps. And
right.
stuff.
Right.
And it might have been done on purpose, and it might just be coincidence, but this scene kind of reminded me like all the belongings of the people that they had like, rounded up and slaughtered, like all their belongings, they kind of were like kind of itemizing and
right. Yeah. It was all kind of categorized. Yeah. And, and now I don't know if this says about, who they have been killing, but there was a lot of children's toys.
Yeah. They made a point to show the children's toys and stuff. Yeah.
And, and obviously they weren't going to have an issue with killing Carl, which, Carl is older, but the toys that they're showing do not represent Carl's age group. And so, we talked about the whole, would they keep Judith? I don't know.
See, Judith, I think they would
is on the younger age,
because
too young.
they could raise Judith and she never had any idea.
Right. I mean, that could be normal life.
Yeah.
We just eat people.
Yeah, that's what we do.
And what I thought when she grabbed the watch? I was certain she was getting ready to pick up a teddy bear.
Yeah, I thought so too.
And she walked by, and I was like, wow, that kind of surprised me.
I thought she was going to see one that reminded her of Sophia's doll or whatever she had. I thought that was going to happen.
But she picks up the watch that she gives to the hippie kid, that gets his throat cut.
In the beginning, yeah.
In the beginning. And,
which I kept thinking the watch was going to come back up. I kept watching for that to happen again. And I don't know if they just saw the opportunity and did it, or if that was planned all along. Oh, God,
it had to have been planned.
Because I kept thinking this watch is going to come up again.
Right.
I didn't think it would be like a season later. Like it was a whole season later, yeah.
In a brutal fashion. But yeah, so she goes, she picks up Daryl's bow. She sees that, and she sees the watch. She sees the bow. She takes the bow and the watch.
Never saw Michonne's sword.
Never saw Michonne's sword.
Which is weird.
Which was probably there, but I mean, that's another thing. Maybe they do go back. Maybe Carol says, hey, there's all kinds of stuff.
Back.
Maybe. Well, there is. And another kind of the spoiler thing, they said they went back and filmed again at Terminus after y'all had already
I was
gone
thinking
down there.
I was thinking though they might have been filming the scene where Carol and Mary were fighting.
Right, that's
because
true.
there's no outside shots, and I heard that everything they filmed was indoors.
Inside. Yeah,
I was thinking, and also, you know, the woman that plays her, Mary, the Lieutenant Yar lady, I don't know her real name. She's not on the show a lot. She's only in a few.
No,
scenes.
she's not. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think she had a big contract. I think they might have been shooting that scene, but I don't know.
It's possible.
That was also around the time where people kept saying that Carol was showing up on the set.
Right.
You know, she wasn't around at first either.
No, and I mean, yeah, if she technically she wasn't in. Well, none of them were really in Terminus very long.
I think they're going back.
But
I think they have to go back.
you know, you would think that they would want, you know, obviously you're not going to go right back when you know there's a ton of walkers in there, but eventually the walkers are going to move on, and you know that there's a ton of stuff there. I mean, why would you not go back and look for supplies and things like that? So, you know, hey, there's plenty of meat.
Well, I want to talk about that again in a second whenever they get out.
But yeah, so Carol Fine, you know, goes on to the room with the candles and all the, you know, never again, we first, kind of all
we
that
still
stuff.
didn't see as much of that room as we thought
Right?
we would.
Well, you know, and they said you're gonna find out about that room.
I think it'll be in flashbacks.
Right. And again, I think we kind of know what it is, that it's, you know, from the back flashes, you know, that Terminus started out as an actual sanctuary, and that this group came in and took over and, you know, raped and brutalized the people of Terminus and then left. And, you know, that's a shrine to the original Terminus people who these people killed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be what it is.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it is.
So, but anyway, Carol walks in there and she's kind of looking around, you know, like, kind of, what is this place? And then, you know, she sees the door, and so she's going to it. And then Mary comes out and says, you know, turn around. I want to see your face. Kind of weird. Like does she know? I guess she figures that she knows that this is the person that started all this.
Yeah. I don't know.
And, you know, she kind of tells, you know, Carol, you know, she tells her to drop her guns and everything, and Carol like swings around and shoots at her, and then they get in like this fight, and, you know, they're, you know, going back and forth, and then Carol gets the upper hand, and she's got the gun, you know, she pulls it up. She, you know, has Mary dead to rights. And, that's when Mary kind of says, you know, this wasn't how this started out.
Yeah.
And I don't know that
she's the first person.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to find out, you know, if she's trying to justify, I mean, I guess she is trying to justify what they're doing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if she's saying that to try and save herself or, you know what, but, you know, basically she says, you know, this wasn't the way it was. We started out to try and be good. These people came in and we took it back over, and this is how it had to be.
Yeah.
Cause we couldn't, you know, we're not going to go through that again. So we're going to be the aggressors. We went from being the cattle. Yeah. Now we're the butchers. Yeah. And, you know, that's how we're going to survive. And,
I like how she says, you could have been one of us.
You could have been one of us.
And it might have just been a passing line they put in there, but it said to Carol.
Right.
It almost has like a meaning, you know, that Mary doesn't even realize that it has.
Right.
Because Carol is, until this episode, or maybe even still, was kind of on the path of like, you know, survival over all.
Right.
You know, or what's best for the group. Like Carol, I'm not saying I don't think she would make the decision to kill innocent people and eat them. But I think that she's the person out of everybody else
that could.
That's the closest on the path.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And then she says, you know, you're not, well, so I forgot what she's like, we're not here or whatever. And Carol says, well, you're not here and I'm not here either. and she walks over to the door and opens the door. And well, after she shot, you know, 'cause she's questioning, she's like, where are the people that you brought in? And like, Mary's not even concerned about that. And, so she shoots her in the leg trying to, you know, get her to talk, and she's laying on the ground. Carol says, you're not here. I'm not here either. Walks over, opens the door and lets the zombies in. And, you know, I guess Carol sees that as the apt punishment for the sins of Mary. And
I wonder, I mean, I think they probably killed Mary. There's a chance though that like she still got away. I don't know. I feel like that actress is only in a few scenes. I don't think she'll be on the show.
I'm pretty sure she's dead. But you know, you see Carol, you know, kind of the same thing, just where she is. She's going to do whatever to save.
She was badass in that episode.
Yeah, she was pretty badass in that episode.
I have Carol was like one of my least favorite characters. I loved how much she changed, but she kind of turned into somebody I couldn't really wrap my head around anymore.
Right.
This episode kind of redeemed Carol in my eyes. Yeah. Because I really thought, I mean, she was like Michonne badassery. You know what I mean? Like it was the equivalent of Michonne, you know, going in there. It was pretty, you know, smart and, you know, ruthless and
ballsy.
Yeah. I thought, you know, the way she took over Terminus like that, basically using the walkers to her advantage.
Right.
And I mean, single-handedly, you know, turning this whole thing around.
Right. And you know, that's kind of the last thing you see of her until the very end. You know, she walks out the door. And then like it goes back to the train car, and you know they're like, you know, they hear everything, they can see everything through the cracks, but they're still trapped in there. And like Eugene's kind of like, you know, I'll put this bullet in here and just compromise the door.
Yeah, he's trying to do something with the gas canister.
Yeah, and you're like, man, okay, and you know, they're like, I think
Sasha.
Well, what's his name? Abraham says, you know, we got to do whatever we can to get out of here. And Carl's like, no, my dad's coming to get us.
Yeah, he'll get us out.
And Carol and Maggie's like, yeah, they're coming. And, you know, obviously they don't know what's going on. Yeah,
but they hear all the commotion. They have to know something happened.
They have to figure, I mean, you know, they have to figure that somehow Rick and them got free somehow and did all this. And then, you know, Sasha is like, kind of like, hey, Eugene, you need to tell us what the cure is. You know,
I'm kind of glad she confronted him about it.
Right. And like, I'm glad she confronted him. And I'm assuming she was asking like, hey, you need to tell us this in case you don't make it or we don't make it. So we know. But then again, I'm thinking,
I think she thinks it's bullshit.
I think she thinks it's bullshit too. Yeah. But, you know, I'm thinking, well, even if he's on the up and up, he can't really say, okay, here's how you cure him in case I don't make it. Yeah. You know, I mean, that's not going to work. So, you know, she's like, hey, you need to tell us. And then, you know, Abraham's like, you know, that's not important and all this stuff. And, you know, finally comes that, you know, he stands up and, you know, he's got this look like, all right, with the mullet going. And then he gives like the speech about being like a bioweapons guy, and they created biological weapons to combat biological weapons, fight fire with fire. And the speech he gives, it's enough techno-babble kind of that you're like, okay, maybe he is. But then again, it's enough bullshitty that you're like, that's a lot of bullshit too.
I still think it's full of shit.
Yeah.
But it's basically like, it's a, some sort of like nanovirus or bioweapon that actually could wipe out the entire human race.
He says something like, I'm at the controls of a weapon, whatever, that could wipe out the entire population of the planet. And you're just like, okay.
And he's like, I think we can change it so that it kills the zombies.
Can tweak it, you know. Yeah. hopefully we won't kill the rest of the survivors.
What if that's how the show ends?
That would be awesome.
It just kills everybody.
Kills everybody.
By mistake. They just kill everybody.
Right. But yeah, so like, so he gives this speech thing and everybody's kind of like, well, okay. And then the door opens and there's Rick and them and, there's utter chaos going on. And one of the things from earlier too that, we didn't mention when Rick and them had first gotten, freed the train car and everything. Rick sees all the Terminus people with the guns walking by and he saves the last guy and he takes him out and he shoots all the Terminus people in the back, but he doesn't kill them. He lets all the walkers attack them.
Oh yeah.
And that just kind of shows you his mindset with them too.
I meant to mention this earlier, but like the scene where Carol's walking in to Terminus with the zombies and she's just kind of blending in with the zombies and she's walking by and watching like the, women and children of Terminus be eaten by the zombies. And like for a moment you feel sorry for them, but then you're like, they fucking eat people.
Right. Exactly. And, and the crazy thing is she doesn't even know that. She's just like, okay.
Screw these people.
Screw these people. But yeah, so like, they get everybody out of the train car and they start fighting. And, at this point, that's when I thought, freaking Laura Croft was getting ready to get killed and she doesn't. But, they make the break for the fence and they start climbing over the fence. And, then Gareth comes up on top and Rick starts shooting at him. And I'm pretty sure he shoots Gareth, at least in the shoulder or something like that. Kind of looks like it, but you're not.
You don't really
100% sure.
Yeah.
And so you at least know that he's alive.
Yeah.
Which we know anyway, cause he's in more episodes, but, they wound up getting over the fence. Everyone gets out. They go through the woods. They go to the, where they buried the guns and everything. And, they're kind of all just standing around trying to, I guess, decide what to do. And Rick's like, uncovers the guns. He's like, okay, let's go back and kill everybody. Yeah. And everybody's like, you can see the look on everybody's face. They're like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? And, and Maggie's even like, this place is pretty much shot to hell.
I mean,
it's gone.
I wanted to ask you, would you want to go back or would you? I would be like, we're out.
Let's
go.
Let's get the fuck out of here.
They were literally going to hit us in the back of the head and then slit our throats.
And I
don't want the chance of that happening again.
I think that is exactly why he wants to go back. Cause, again, like I said, I think he saw the guy, Alex, on the table and knows that these people just, I think he realizes that it's not even, they're not being brutal because they're just evil. This is just how it is. And he's like, we can't let people like this survive. And I think there is the revenge factor too. I think but yeah, he's like dead set, like on going back in there.
Maybe he doesn't want it to happen to anybody else. Like they can regroup and then continue.
Well, he had his red handled machete. He was ready to go back and kick some ass.
Yeah.
And, you see Carol walk up and
there must be, so he's covering up the signs too. So he must not want.
He doesn't want other people to go there.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, you see Carol walk up and then kind of Daryl turns and sees her.
That was awesome.
That's a great scene. Cause like, the whole in season 3, you're kind of like, is Carol and Daryl gonna like hook up with each other? Or are they but in that scene, I saw it more like the son saw his mom and went running up to her and like,
whatever it is, they're definitely special to each other.
Right.
Yeah.
And, and like, they had the big hug and all this stuff. And then, Rick standing there and you could see Rick is just totally, and this is the first time since he dropped her off that they've seen each other.
Yep.
And, Rick's like, was that you? Did you do that? And, he knew, and then they have the big embrace and then she's just kind of like, you've got to come with me now kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, at that point, Rick's whole thing about going back is
Jesus was dead.
Yeah. And I was wondering this too. Do you think that she said, "I've got Judith"?
I don't know.
Or do you think that she didn't say anything until he didn't know until he saw Judith?
He might have just known that
maybe
this is something important. Yeah. I don't know.
But then, they come around, they crest the little hill, and there's Tyrese holding Judith, and, Rick and Carl go running, and Sasha runs to Tyrese, and, there's the big emotional, reunion there. And, you can see Rick's demeanor change kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And, afterward, Carol says something about the dude, and he's like, he's dead, and I can do it now.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, well, he's come out of his little funk kind of thing. You're wondering, what's next, and then that kind of like cuts off. They show them walking on the tracks. You see Rick at the terminus sign, covers it up that said, and then he writes "No Sanctuary," which episode name. And then they, leave the tracks and go into the woods.
Yeah.
And then it flashes back to then again.
Yeah.
So kind of back to the beginning, and you see a train car door open. Somebody gets thrown in, and it's Mary. And Gareth and Alex are there. And you find out that, that Gareth and Alex are brothers, and that's their mom. And, what Gareth says something like, he says something like, "Oh, things aren't bad," or whatever. And then like the guy like clocks Gareth over the upside the head, and things are like they are, kind of thing. And then, or things are really bad, or
he's like, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. And then, the guy hits him and is like, "No, it won't."
No, it's not going to be okay. And so,
these guys, I really want them to turn out to be the saviors.
The saviors.
Yeah.
And it's possible. I mean, she does say
that they laughed at
that
her.
they left. Now, obviously, this guy didn't leave because he was in the train car. But she did say that they came and then they left. So, I'm sure some people left, and they may have left some people behind to kind of.
And they're still moving towards.
They're still moving wherever.
So they might be in Alexandria now.
And that's they shut them back in the car, and that's when Gareth says, "You're either the butcher or the cattle."
And I thought this was weird that he said that then.
Right.
Because this is before, you would think it's something that he heard from them.
Right.
And maybe it is. Maybe it is.
Maybe
they called him cattle or something, and then he came up with that phrase. I don't know. It just seems odd to me that like this is a time frame where Gareth is still like, he's still supposedly has good.
Right.
But
he's definitely changing.
Yeah.
And then, it's kind of one of those things where you could see the other people, like that other girl that was in there. And, when he throws Mary back in there, the guy's like, "Okay, well, let's take her."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Not again," or whatever. And it's
so maybe they've been in there for a little while.
They've been in there, and like, and at the beginning, one of the things that I forgot to mention at the, the first scene at the very beginning is like when the show actually starts and comes on, you see them in that train car. There's nothing but blood curdling screams going on outside that train car.
Oh yeah.
And when I watched it that night, I couldn't understand what Alex said at the beginning about the signs. And I kept going, what was he saying? I kept rewinding it. And the main thing I kept hearing every time I rewind it, trying to hear what he was saying, was I could just hear that somebody screaming. I was like, "Good Lord, that's just brutal." But yeah, I mean, the guy that throws them in, that throws Mary back in the car, he's got all the tattoos on his face, and he's the guy that was locked in the train car that Glenn and them, release. And we just kind of say he looks like Negan.
That was my the finale of this.
Well, a lot of people did.
That's what I thought. Yeah, and I saw a lot of articles online, but no, it's actually Sky Gam. They said it. Greg Nicotero said it. Someone said it on The Talking Dead.
Yeah.
But also Robert Kirkman posted a tweet that said, like, in capital letters, that was not Negan.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and obviously if it was Negan, that would be kind of a huge letdown because he dies.
Because he dies in the same episode.
And then that's essentially how the episode ends. You know, you kind of see where Terminus kind of started from that point. At some point, somehow they get out and take over Terminus from these people and turn into those people.
And Sunday's going to be so freaking good.
Right. And then, you know, they have the credits and then the show comes back on.
Yeah.
And you just see a dude standing on the railroad tracks wearing a mask and
I don't get why he had the mask on.
So you wouldn't know who he was when they should. I mean, he was like, oh shit, there's a camera up there. I'm not going to, but
it's like Georgia heat, broad daylight.
Right. But you know, the guy takes his mask off and it's Morgan.
Yeah.
And, he sees the no sanctuary sign that Rick, you know, kind of covered up and everything. And,
a lot of people are saying, we should at least mention that. A lot of people are saying that it looks like time has passed because there's vines growing up on the sign. I kind of think that it's just way the angle of the shot is.
I think it is too.
Yeah, I don't think it's vines.
I don't think he walked up on it like 10 minutes later, but I mean, it may be a day,
I think there's
2
no
days,
way
3
to
days,
tell.
a week,
It could
something
be
like that.
time.
But I don't think it's like, I think I saw one post where they're like, it could be like 6 months later. I'm like, that would be stupid.
Well, besides that, 6 months, like summertime, 6 months from that, it would be, the leaves would change.
They would be changed. I mean? Yeah. I mean, I think it was relatively, you know, a short amount of time. I mean, and then like he kind of goes into the woods right where Rick and them went into the woods and he sees the X's in the circle on the tree.
So we were talking about the X's. At first, we were talking about the X's could be Rick trying to lead somebody, but I don't think Rick knows that Morgan's following.
Right.
I don't think,
especially after the whole last episode with Morgan, because Morgan was
crazy,
batshit crazy. Yeah.
And I think that if that was the case, Rick would have been doing it all along.
Right.
And that's hard to believe.
And the only thing in the series, opener is that Rick said he would use a walkie-talkie and say, you know, try and get in contact with me. You know, they never said, hey, we're going to leave X's around in case, you know, we see each other. Now, it could be something that they're going to later say they talked about it. We just never mentioned it in the show.
Yeah.
But my guess is, right. But at the same time, Morgan acts like he recognizes what this symbol is. And then he walks into the woods kind of after them. You know, I'm assuming he's following that trail. But
I have 2 ideas. One, what if they're not X's, they're crosses? Because we know that there's some crosses on the back of cars and things like that.
Right.
What if it's going to turn out that they're like, you know, the dude, when he does it, it makes an X instead of a cross.
He's all cross-eyed. You can't tell which way he's going.
Or more likely, what if it's actually Gareth marking the tracks for Rick's group? What if it's Gareth following Rick and Morgan's following Gareth?
Right. Well, my thinking was kind of along the same line. What I was thinking, maybe Morgan has come across some group, maybe not necessarily Terminus, maybe like the Saviors or something like that. And that's their mark.
Yeah.
And
that's too fresh for them. They would be long gone.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's like,
but we don't know her Father Gabriel. There's obviously another group of people, and that's with somebody.
And maybe, and maybe he's a part of that. And so he sees, and maybe you would think that Morgan doesn't know that even if he is following a group, you'd have to assume he doesn't know that it is necessarily Rick and them.
Right.
Maybe he is just following a route that whatever group he's involved with, you know, set out a trail.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I mean, and you see him walk into the woods right where Rick and them walk in. The one thing that also, wouldn't Rick and them notice that?
Yeah, I think the X's are either placed by them or after them.
After them. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
I might go back and watch the scene and see if, because Rick never stops.
Rick never stops and nobody else does. They just keep walking in the woods.
Yeah.
So maybe,
it's got something to do with another group, I think.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it is Gareth and them, Mark, and maybe he's following them, and maybe Morgan knows the MO of the termites and knows that that's a symbol that they're following somebody, and he is against them, sort of.
It's just, why would he decide to venture out?
Right? I don't know.
Like,
and he looked normal. I mean, I don't think he was crazy anymore either.
Nah. I don't know, man.
I don't know either. But I guess all will be answered in future episodes.
I think that'll take a while. I don't think they'll reveal that.
Well, I'm going to say the way they go with Morgan might not even show up again till like
season 6.
Season 6. Yeah. I mean, and again, you know, the spoiler sites and all this stuff.
Didn't even mention him.
Never mentioned one thing about Morgan.
He can't be in a lot.
And they've been showing, you know, pictures of Father Gabriel, and they've been showing all these other things.
Yeah.
And not one person has been like, oh, hey, we happened to snap a picture of Morgan.
Right.
So they did an excellent job of keeping him under wraps.
No mention of Beth in this episode either.
Mm-mm. And I don't know that necessarily she's going to be in the next episode either. I think this next episode is all going to be about
they're going to run the Father Gabriel. Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Which I'm interested to know who he's with.
Right.
That's the main thing I'm wondering about him, and that could have something to do with the X's. But
right.
Anyway, we've gone for a really long time.
We have.
And I hope that it recorded because I forgot that my computer's not set to not go to sleep. So we'll see if it recorded. If it didn't, then sorry about that.
We'll just do it again.
We'll just have to do it again tomorrow or something.
Right.
All right. Well, we start the music.
Let's do it.
You can find more Talk the Walk at talkthewalk.com. You can find more great shows like this one at undercastnetwork.com. I'm currently revamping the site on there. Actually, Talk the Walk has a much more prominent, appearance on there. So, yeah. And you can follow us on Twitter at Talk the Walk and Facebook.com.
Maybe we'll actually put something on Twitter eventually.
I'm going to start using the Twitter, yeah. I promise I'll start using it. I just have so many I have to follow.
Right, I know.
It's crazy. When we split the show off from ECN, I didn't realize how much more work it was going to be. But anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
time. Yeah.